Growing up, I was an extremely curious child. And this was primarily because my father created an environment that fueled my curiosity without knowing. He worked as an auditor, but in our neighborhood and our local community, he was known as a handyman. He did this for free, actually. He would repair people's cars. He would be called when people had electronic faults and plumbing faults and all sorts. He was so versatile. In fact, my dad was so good that whenever something got spoiled in our house and we brought someone to repair it, we all knew that was the last time the person was going to come because my father would pay attention and pick up from that. But you see, the most interesting thing about how I became very, very curious as a child is that my dad had a room in the house where no one stayed in, no one slept in. All he had there were electronics, devices that had gone spoiled, things that people would normally throw away. But the value my father saw in having that in that room was that whenever something got spoiled that was valuable to the household, he would pick or he could find a spare part, something that would maybe missing or would not be available. He could actually pick it from something similar in that room and then fix it. So that was the value he saw. But for me, what I saw was a toy heaven. I saw a place that I could go in and break things, make things. I mean, do several things that were beyond what an average child would have as toys. He wasn't having it, but that was the reality for me. So it fueled my imagination, it fueled my curiosity. I would dream about that room when I was in school. About 7 or 8, I had this idea. I was curious about the relationship between water and our television set. Now, for some of you who grew up in the late 1990s or the early 2000s, you remember that we used to have this box TV that had rubber buttons. And so I took a syringe, put water in the syringe, and it went through the power on button. And of course, that was the end of the TV. My dad came back and he was so sad about it. But you see, even though it seemed very foolish as a child and I was disciplined for it, it came from a place of curiosity because every child wants to watch TV and watch cartoons, right? And over the years, my curiosity was guided furthermore by the kind of mentorship my father gave me and the mentorship that others, gave me, seeing that I had a very strong passion for technology and using technology to help people. But you see, what this episode is about is the decline, the terrible decline in curiosity amongst many adults. Research by Paul Harris of Harvard University shows us that children between ages 2 and 5 ask approximately 100 to 300 genuine questions per day. But by age 10, it drops to 80%. And it just continues to decline. By age 23, the decline has happened so much so that people rarely ask questions, right? And that's a problem because you see, right now, artificial intelligence is automating several things. It's not news to us anymore. The world is changing. The era of specialists. In fact, the industrial revolution that has transitioned and transitioned is about to be disrupted literally. And your strongest edge is not just knowing how to use AI or use AI tools. It's not knowing how to use digital tools. Your strongest edge is understanding how your brain operates, is understanding what triggers what in your brain. And you see, curiosity is a very, very powerful ability that the brain has. It's not a mood, it's not a disposition, it's not something you have or you do not have. It's a neurobiological drive. It is so powerful that it sits in the same level as hunger, as the need for shelter, as the need, that drives humanity. It sits in that same level. And you see, when curiosity is triggered, it works so powerfully with the hippocampus, this seat of memory and learning. And it can improve your memory retention as much as 400%. It's actually incredible. When you're curious about something, you're curious about a problem, you're curious about a question, you literally become a superior learning being for that period of time. Curiosity is a very, very powerful ability that a human being has. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, what is causing the decline? Why is curiosity, as powerful as it is, declining among adults in this 21st century? When you look at history and you look at Leonardo da Vinci, he's the perfect example of the power of curiosity. Leonardo da Vinci, by 14, was an apprentice in a painter shop. But you see, from that point, he was extremely curious about all things, about nature, about people, about buildings. His curiosity was so strong and so powerful that it elevated his thinking. It elevated his ability to comprehend things. Leonardo da Vinci was so given to curiosity, to the care of things, to the care of nature, that curiosity became a time traveling machine for him. He began to visualize aircrafts. He began to visualize architectural buildings, walkways. He began to draw and write things that were beyond his timeline. Some of the writings and the drawings of aircraft were picked up by the Wright brothers hundreds of years after, and they were implemented on. He was so curious about the anatomy of human beings that he began to dissect dead people at a time where it was morally and legally wrong, right? But you see, some of the things he noted and he drew from the anatomy of a human being became very, very useful in advancing medicine, although he was not a doctor and he had nothing to do with medicine. Engineering, mechanics, the list is literally endless. Over 7,000 notes left, nothing published. He was that curious about everything, and he noted. Sometimes he carried questions for weeks, for months, and he would write in his notes. And you see, many people were able to build on the things that Leonardo da Vinci did not only pay attention to, but he allowed curiosity to carry like a boat. Curiosity is one of your strongest edge as a person, especially in this dispensation, irrespective of your field. And so we must redeem it. If the research says that curiosity is declining, then we need to study and understand why it's declining and then begin to do things to redeem curiosity, to ensure that as an average human being, you are firing the curiosity circuit. You are firing it not just in a passive way, because you see, some people, what they do is that they have a passive way of exercising curiosity by trying to entertain themselves, doom scrolling, being anxious, being nosy. That's not what curiosity is. Curiosity is not being nosy. The root word of curiosity means care, caring for something. So what it entails is taking something, and because of the care you have for that thing, you pursue it. It unlocks God level mode for the human brain. When you look at history and advancement, you find out that the key requirement for innovation, for discovery, for invention was not just a degree or a certification, it was things like curiosity. Euclid, many centuries ago, was curious about the rules of shape and space, and thereby he became the father of geometry and unlocked 23 centuries of applied mathematics across engineering, architecture, and computer science. Marie Curie was curious about the radiation that Iranian salt emitted, and that curiosity unlocked treatment for cancer, carbon dating, nuclear physics, and etc. Alexander Fleming was curious about why bacteria culture was dying around contaminated mold. And that curiosity carried him to unlock the discovery of penicillin, the first antibiotics that has saved more than 200 million people. The list is actually endless of several people that when you study their lives, you find out that what differentiated them from others was not education, it was curiosity. And so I want to challenge you. I want you to study about curiosity and I want you to redeem your curiosity. Research shows us that one of the ways you can redeem your curiosity is by cross domain learning. What does that mean, really? It simply means you have a field that maybe you work in or a field of study, but you pick another field that you're not an expert in, that you do not have a flow with, and you begin to study, you begin to read it. Another way is by journaling your thoughts, journaling your questions, and carrying those questions. Another way is by immersing yourself in nature, because many of man's discoveries, they came from biomimicry, right? Which is simply observing nature and then mimicking it in science and technology. If you pay attention to some of these things, you would be irreplaceable by AI. I assure you, irrespective of your field, irrespective of your profession, you would become one of the builders that have laid the foundations for science and technology and innovation and efficiency for generations to come. So take a field that is completely adjacent to your field and let me know in the comments what that field is or what that problem is and pursue it with all curiosity and you would be in awe where the boat of curiosity takes you to. Thank you.